All right, today we are diving into a real medical mystery, a force so powerful it can mimic our strongest drugs, but without a single active ingredient. Yep, we are talking about the placebo effect.
So let me just start with a question that, honestly, it could change how you think about medicine. What if the most powerful part of a drug isn't the drug at all, but just your belief in it?
You know, the word placebo actually comes from Latin, and it means I shall please. And that's kind of how we think of it, right? A simple sugar pill, a fake treatment they use in studies to test the real drug. It's supposed to be, well, nothing, a baseline. But what if that nothing is actually something incredibly powerful?
This whole idea of a placebo, it's been around for centuries. At first, it was really just a way to make a patient feel better, to please them. But then, in the 1950s, everything changed. Suddenly, the placebo wasn't just some comfort measure on the side. It became the gold standard, the benchmark that every single new drug had to beat. And that is where things started to get really interesting.
And this is where the story takes a wild turn. Because when scientists started putting modern drugs up against these so-called inert placebos, they stumbled onto something completely astonishing about the placebo itself. Okay, so a huge scientific review looked at a ton of studies, and what they found was just mind-blowing. They looked at what's called effect size, which is basically just a fancy way of saying how well does this thing actually work. And get this, in many, many cases, the placebo was nearly as powerful as the actual active drug. Now, this isn't some little statistical quirk. This is a finding that really shakes the very foundation of medicine. And to really see how powerful this is, let's zoom in on one of the most widely prescribed types of drugs on the entire planet. Okay, now these numbers are wild. They come from a massive analysis of the data that drug companies themselves submitted to the FDA for the most popular antidepressants. So look at this. Patients who took a placebo, a sugar pill, saw their depression scores improve by a whopping 8.3 points. Now, what about the people on the actual drug? They improved by 10.1 points. You see where this is going? So here's the kicker, the really crucial part. Most of the improvement people felt came from the placebo response. The actual extra benefit they got from the chemical in the drug was just 1.8 points. Now, yeah, that's a real difference. You can measure it. But wow, is it small? And what does that tiny 1.8 point difference actually mean for a patient, in the real world? Well, according to the UK's official health guidelines, a difference that small isn't even considered clinically meaningful. In other words, it's an effect so tiny a doctor probably wouldn't even notice it in their patient. So, if it's not really the drug doing the heavy lifting, what on earth is going on? How can a simple belief, an expectation, create such a powerful physical change? Well, the answer isn't magic. It's in your brain. Scientists have basically zeroed in on two main reasons this works. First, there's conscious expectation. Just believing you're getting a treatment that will work can literally kick your body's own healing systems into high gear. The second one is a little different. It's kind of like Pavlov's dogs. It's called conditioning. Your body actually learns to connect all the rituals of getting treatment, the doctor's white coat, the smell of the office, the act of swallowing a pill, with the feeling of getting better. And here's how that conditioning works. It's pretty simple, actually. Step 1. A patient gets a real drug, like morphine, that causes a real biological response, pain relief. Step 2. That drug is always paired with something neutral, like the sight of a needle. You do that enough times and you get to step 3. The brain has learned the association. So now, just the cue alone, an injection of nothing but salt water, a total placebo, can trigger the body to release its own pain-fighting chemicals. The body has learned its lesson. And this is so important to understand. The placebo effect isn't just you thinking you feel better. It's not just in your head. These are real, physical, measurable changes in your body. We're talking about your brain releasing its own natural painkillers, like opioids. We see levels of neurotransmitters, like dopamine, actually changing. Stress hormones go down. And you can see it. You put someone in a brain scanner, you can literally watch different parts of their brain light up. This is a physical reality, sparked by nothing more than belief. But belief is a double-edged sword. If a positive expectation can heal, what do you think a negative one can do? And this is where we get into some of the really strange paradoxes of the placebo effect. So let me introduce you to the nocebo effect. It's from the Latin for I shall harm, and it's basically the placebo's evil twin. If you expect a treatment is going to cause negative side effects, guess what?
You are way more likely to experience them, even if what you took was just a sugar pill. Just how powerful is this? Okay, think back to the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccines. A huge study found something incredible. A staggering 72% of the side effects people reported after their first dose, things like headaches, fatigue, muscle soreness, were likely caused by the nocebo effect. It wasn't the vaccine itself. It was the expectation of feeling sick that actually created the symptoms.
Now, this massive power of expectation creates a huge problem for what we consider the gold standard of medical research, the double-blind trial. The one where neither the patient nor the doctor is supposed to know who's getting the real drug and who's getting the placebo. So, just how blind are these trials really? Not very, it turns out. In one major study on antidepressants, they asked the doctors to just guess. Guess which of your patients is on the real drug and which one is on the placebo. The result? The doctors guessed correctly a massive 87% of the time. The patients themselves were right 78% of the time. I mean, that blindfold isn't just thin, it's practically see-through. And the reason is actually pretty simple. Side effects. The real drugs often cause really noticeable things, right? Like dry mouth or feeling sleepy or a little dizzy. As soon as patients and doctors notice those little cues, the blind is broken. They figure, oh, I must be on the real drug. And that knowledge turbocharges their expectations and their placebo response, which totally messes up the results of the trial. So, where does this leave us? What does all this mean for the future of medicine? If a huge chunk of healing comes from the context of the care and not just the chemical in the pill, well, we might need to rethink our entire approach. There's this quote from a psychoanalyst named Michael Balint that just nails it. He said, "The doctor himself is a therapeutic agent." Think about that. The trust you have in your doctor, the ritual of the visit, the hope they give you, those aren't just nice little extras. They are active ingredients in healing. The doctor becomes the medicine. And that leaves us with one final, and I think absolutely crucial question. We spend billions upon billions of dollars developing new drugs that often produce just tiny benefits over a placebo, all while we tend to ignore the enormous power of the healing environment itself. So if the meaning and the context of our medical care can be just as powerful as the treatment, sometimes even more so, then how do we start redesigning medicine itself to harness that power ethically and intentionally for every single patient?